time for the Pucking Around podcast. Puck around and find out. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Pucking Around podcast, episode 44. My name is Matt Vogel. As always, with us to my right is Alex. Alex, say hello to the people.
¿Cómo estás, everyone? How are we doing tonight?
On his right, my co-host on Hibernation, Cam.
What's going on, everybody?
And the two gentlemen down below on the bottom, both from Have Normals. We have Matt.
I'm also Matt.
And we have Rick.
Ciao, everybody.
We have a good show for you guys today. We're going to get into
hockey.
We're going to talk some hockey. We're going to get into, some of the penalties and the referees situation that's been going on, the first couple weeks of the season. And then we're going to, not dive too far into our preseason predictions, but, just some updated team impressions from what we've seen from the small sample size so far. So, Kim, what do you got for us today?
Thanks, Vogel. We're going to talk about the penalties and the referees first. It's been a small sample size. A total of 178 games have been played so far in the first 2 weeks. That is among the 32 NHL teams, and of those 178 games played, 683 total penalties have been assessed, including minors, majors, and misconducts. That is an average about 4 penalties called per game. Just to rattle off some stats for you guys. So Utah has the most penalty minutes with 85. Boston is the most penalized team with 34 minors. Thanks a lot, Nikita Zadorov.
Boo, Boston.
Life's a bitch. Philadelphia is the most penalized team in terms of majors with a total of 4.
Boston,
yeah. Boston leads the league in penalties drawn and taken. So, take what you want out of that. Not much to be said. Does it appear that more penalties are being called, even though that the average penalties per game is 4? It seems like a lot, right? Is it just me?
It feels like it's a lot. There's a lot of ticky-tack stuff. Like, Rick, the other night, Doc got called for a hook, and it wasn't even close to a hook. Like
nothing. You know what? Though, here's my theory. Refs are so bad over the last few seasons. I think some of the players are just taking advantage of that, knowing they're not going to get called, or just doing really bad things, forcing the refs to have to call them. Did that make any sense? I'm not even sure myself. Never mind.
Trying to get that.
I'm still dizzy from Nordy adjusting his camera during Cam's intro there. I'm still trying to get my land legs.
Oh my God. No, I mean, it's difficult, right? I mean, it's the start of the season, 2 weeks. The refs are still trying to get their feet and, their minds, in the right spot. I agree with Matt, that there's been a lot of ticky-tack stuff, and I've always been on the side of, if it's ticky-tack, you kind of got to let them play a little bit, but if you're going to call it both ways. And I also want to preface this is in no way, shape, or form, trying to blame the refs for outcomes of games. It's just trying to understand, where their logic and calling these calls is kind of coming from, right? It's kind of difficult.
I have a bit of... Sorry, you go.
Yeah, I was just going to finish that. Ticky-tack calls are calls. They're calls, right? They're penalties. Jamey alluded to it, during the Flyra Gonna Flyra live stream for the game, and he said, it's unfortunate, even if it's ticky-tack, it's a penalty. But sometimes you just got to let them. Huh?
As long as they're legit, it's fine.
I mean, even if it's ticky-tack, dude, it is still a penalty. But I think sometimes, if you're really teetering on that line, let the guys play. You know what I mean? Wait till it starts becoming more obvious. You know what I mean? Because you're effectively telling the players how the game is going to go.
I'm on the model of consistency. I just want a game called. If you're going to call something ticky-tack down the line early in the game, call that all game. Because I don't want you to start making calls in the first period that are a little ticky-tack. And in the second period, I'll let that go, and I'll let that go. No, just call it straightforward from start to finish, and don't make it an issue later on where you can be like, oh, well, player X got called for a hook, and I did in the first period, but this guy on the opposing team does the same exact thing, and I don't get, and I'm not drawing a penalty. All I'm in the matter, me personally at least, is just building some level of consistency. Ticky-tack calls, they're calls. It's like offsides. It's the offsides rule, like me and you argue about, Cam. Is it offsides? I guess, yeah, technically, but if it's by a fraction of an inch, I'd be kind of pissed off if you call them that if a goal scored 30 seconds later. Technically offside, but I don't know if I'd call that. That's kind of but when it comes to the ticky-tack calls, I personally just want consistency.
Yeah, that's
call ticky-tack, call it all game. If you're not going to call that, let it go all game.
That's different though, Alex. Like, you know what I mean? That's just a difference of it is different because we're talking in the form of like, you know, penalties, not just offsides calls, you know what I mean? Or icings. Like, you know,
but it is official ruling is the point.
It's an official ruling, sure, but it's not putting the other team a man down unless it's a failed challenge,
but
right?
So, I mean, potentially.
Can
so
I
it
ask
is a momentum swing.
Can I ask a question? You know, for betting props, do they bet on how many penalties are in a game?
No, I have never seen that before.
Rick, I'm pretty sure you can bet on anything. At least not if it's not on an official forum, you could bet on it in some.
I don't think
I'm not going anywhere with that now that you said that.
You can bet on a lot when it comes to hockey, but penalties called and taken, I have never seen before. That's one I don't think I've seen.
Because that would get too much, and that kind of puts like you can put a lot of question into the refereeing if they were to even allow that, because that ruins a lot of integrity of the sport. Whereas in, like, you know, goals scored, 4 goals against, and things like that. So it's a way to kind of keep the refs honest. Now, does that mean it's not being done, like, you know, in the back? Like, you know, maybe it could be from certain, like, you know, bookies or anything like that. But in terms of official sanction sites, no,
that's not a one you could put in.
No.
Yeah.
But just that you guys brought up referees. You know me. Again, you took a chance that I was gonna, you know, just saying.
No, I don't think it's a thing where the refs are in it with Vegas or anything like that.
No, if there's no props for it, if there's no props, then there's no way they're gonna. So my theory is out the window.
I mean, it can affect betting. Like if you're, for example, I'll give something. You can bet on over and under goals scored in a game. And a bunch of penalties being called leads to more power plays. More power plays leads to more potential possibilities of scoring. So I mean, can penalties affect betting? Yes, but a direct call to actual betting on props? No. I mean, betting on like actual penalties called? No. So can it affect it? Yes, but not directly, I think is a better way to put it.
All right, anybody else want to answer it for me?
I mean,
okay.
I mean, you're just looking for a yes. I mean, if you look at it though, like it's an average of 4 penalties per game, right? Like think about it. That's really not a lot. That if it's split evenly, that's that's like, you know, 2 power plays and 2 penalty kills each, like, you know, for each team. But it's not always going to get called that way, right? You don't know which way those penalties are going to sway, and you don't know who the refs are going to be, like, you know, looking at. Because I guarantee you, there are players that refs will look at more than other players.
Always been that way.
Especially
I do wonder too if you look into the games where more, because obviously 4 average across the league is not split up evenly. So I wonder if you look into it, and I don't know how you would, but even more, there are like certain, like, not teams of refs, but certain officials that are calling games. I wonder if like some
Francois Saint
I wonder if certain officials are calling more than others, and that's why it's been so staggered. But
Kelly Sutherland, like, it's there's a lot there.
The thing is, you know, there were some bad refs, there were some good refs. I think all the good refs retired now, and I don't think there's a good ref anymore.
Oh no, Wes McCauley's still out there. I mean, I think he's regressing significantly. I mean, over the last, I think, year or so, he's kind of calling calling a lot of things, and it's starting to be questionable. So maybe he might need an eye exam, because about a decade ago, I loved Wes McCauley. I thought he was a good ref. I thought he was a consistent ref, and I thought his explanations were good. And I think he did a good job. It could be the youth of the refs too. Like, you know, maybe their training program is different now than it was long before. But I don't know. I think they need to, whatever it is, maybe however they train, provide better examples. Like, you know, because, you know, they don't just say, here's the book, read it, and, you know, that's what it is. They definitely show examples on the screen. So I don't know what it is, but it's a lot of calls. And even some in Bruins games I've questioned. I've seen some in other games that I've questioned, and I'm just like, I don't know. And I think refs also in the league in general punish bigger and taller players. Like, you know what I mean? If you're like 6'7", or anything over 6'5", you could get called for a cross-checking because your stick is inherently at the guy's numbers. You know what I mean? Does that necessarily mean that that's a cross-check? No, it just means like you can't get any lower or higher because either you'll decapitate him or break his spine. You know what I mean? So there are just some things biologically that maybe the league should take a look at too and look at force. But again, I can't go back on that because I said it's not your job to determine intent or force. It's your job to determine whether or not there was an infraction.
They should probably
Alex, next week book Wes McCauley so we can have a conversation with him.
Yeah, someone needs to get to the bottom
Alex,
of it.
book him.
I'll book Mr. McCauley. I'll be rolling his DMs.
Just like that. Book him, Dano.
All right, Mr.
The biggest
McCauley.
thing-
me.
Where's
pucking
Tim
around.
Peel when you need him?
30, be there.
The biggest thing that
problem.
at least a couple times this year.
You rapscallion. I will give you a round of fisticuffs when you least expect it.
Is the goalie interference? I know that we've seen it a couple times
We all
this
hate
year.
goalie interference.
But we've seen it a couple times in Boston games, and we can. I mean, everybody in their mother is going back on Twitter and talking about the Coyle goalie interference against Florida in the playoffs last year. I mean, that is one that it seems like no one has gotten right. No one's ever going to get right.
Yeah,
no one's
there's no
ever going to be happy with
Nah,
it.
it's just never gonna happen.
I have a question. What do you think we get a consistency on first? Goalie interference or penalties made by the dopes at Dops, as Rick likes to call it?
Neither.
You got to pick one.
Neither.
It's never gonna happen. And like goalie interference, I don't think we'll ever get a sufficient answer to because I just feel like it changes every game. Honest to God, like if you go like game by game, look at the way it's called.
It's an interpretation kind of call, and every different group sees it differently.
Right.
That's the problem. They have to have some kind of way to make that more cut and dried. I don't know how, but I'm saying they got to find a way to.
It's infuriating watching all these different games and how it's never called the same way. You want to talk about getting some consistency? Start with there.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's
I
great.
agree.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're gonna call things too, I mean, call it by the letter, like something like that. If especially if you're being challenged, right, and if they don't like the call, you have all the time in the world to get the call right. I think that's one thing I think that needs to be absolute. If you are going to have your ruling challenged, the irrefutable evidence to me is your rule book, right? Was there an infraction by the letter of your rule book? Like, you know what I mean? Because that's how the eyes in the sky, are judging it, right? That's how they communicate to the Boston Bruins bench or the Montreal bench, Philly, whoever, Seattle, whatever. That's how they're going to communicate it to them. Hey, by the book, we believe this is, an infraction. You know what I mean? So when I think you're on the headset with Toronto, that's how they should view it. They shouldn't be like, you shouldn't be spending too much time on it. The way I see it, open up the page in the book, Control F. We're in the 21st century. I know Alex has difficulty with Google Drive, but I mean,
I hate it.
But
honestly,
these guys are very
insert Curb Your Enthusiasm theme here.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't mind the where they call a 5-minute major and then they can review it. And
That's a good ad.
Yes.
I agree.
I don't
with
mind that.
because you at least have the opportunity to correct your error.
Yeah.
I'll give a good comp. When the NFL lets a fumble play on, and then you can go back and review it after the fact. Because if you a play dead before something is ruled, you can't review it. It's the same thing with calling a penalty in this aspect. If you don't call a penalty, you can't challenge a penalty to see if it's called. At least if you call the major at first and you know it's a penalty, you can at least look back and correct the potential error that may have been made by the
potentially. They don't always get it. Unfortunately,
they don't
right?
always get it right.
No,
but
you
it
think
implementation.
They got the opportunity. We can look at this, and they still don't always get it right.
They
You
don't
think they
but
would.
It definitely at least benefits and helps. At least it's better than
it does
not
help.
even having
No, it
Yeah.
does help.
And
I
I mean,
like it.
well.
It
There's
might
an
take
aspect.
a little longer, but
Well, there's an aspect to this too. I mean, you got to think about the fans too. If the fans are sitting in the stadium and waiting 5 minutes, you have to get the call right. You know what I mean? But the fans are the fans are going to be not satisfied no matter what the call is. But still, you can't. You still have to at least get as close to the right answer as you possibly can. And I'll give you some partial credit on your exam. You know what I mean? It's one of those. It's one of those things when you're given all that time. Like you have to get it done.
yeah. But I think I think a lot of fans don't realize as well that they have to see it go, yes, definitively that's this. You can't overturn the call unless you have definitive proof. So if you can't really tell, they can't overturn the call.
Yep. I don't know. That thing still bugs me from last season with the Bennett hit into Coyle. I mean, by the letter of the book, that is exactly goaltender interference. And they said that they acknowledged the contact, and they said like, but they don't think it was the exact wording was they acknowledged that there was contact, but they didn't believe it was enough contact or enough intent or enough force to be deemed goaltender interference. And it goes back to me saying your job is not to determine the amount of force. You don't have physics degrees. You're not scientists. You're NHL referees.
But this is what I mean by make it cut and dried. Make it kind of cut and dried, right? If there was contact, it should stop there. There was contact, goalie interference.
Yep. You don't need to try and justify.
Yeah.
Because if you're justifying that point, then you're just trying to justify a wrong answer. That's the way I'm saying. Like, you know what I mean? Honest people and correct people have the right answer. It's short, sweet, to the point. You don't need to defend it.
Sometimes you have to take the decision away from them to make their interpretation and have some things that are just that. If you see it that way, it's, if he touches them, that's it. It's a penalty. And then that way they don't go, it'll take away a lot of the fans complaining, and maybe we'll get some confidence back in the refs.
Like, who initiates contact too, right? You got to think of it this way. Like,
that's important.
When the goal against Brazeau, like, when Brazeau touched Primo, or I think it was Montembeault, I can't remember who specifically he touched.
Primo.
But
it was goalie interference.
Brazeau did. No, it was not. Brazeau did not initiate the contact.
I didn't agree with that call either. I watched it live.
You can hate me all you want, Rick, but
I don't hate you. You can have your fucking opinion.
I hate you.
Oh, well, thank you for that. I appreciate. Oh, you hate him. That's okay though. I don't mind that.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Not you, Rick.
More than anyone on this show, but respectfully hate each other. But
I just fucking hate you.
But seriously, I mean, it shows you right there when you leave that decision. Here's the two of us. We all are three of us here. And we have different of opinion. But if you would have just said, was there contact? Yeah, then it's goalie interference, and it would save the arguing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's just one example. That's just one example. Or just call it the same in the same way in the same game, right? Like Alex said, consistency, right? And I don't want to keep beating this with, like, with
call it the
same. It needs to be beat.
No, I really don't, because we're just going to continue on the same path and just say, yep, no, this needs to be on consistency. But like you've just seen in game where like some guy will get his wrist hacked by a defending player, nothing will be called, but the same play, that same player will, or the opposing player that was getting his wrist hacked will probably hack at the leg intending to hit the puck, and they're going to call it a slashing call. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, and are you going to call that a retaliatory thing? No, it's not. That was just a hockey play, and you didn't call it the other way. So what are you doing? You have 4 refs on the ice. If all of you are looking at the puck, none of you are doing. Like 3 of you are not doing your job.
But it's what I don't like about makeup calls, right? Because makeup calls, how many of them are legit, right? They're not really. It's a stretch, right? So take away that bullshit. Call penalties that as they're listed in the book. They got to find a way to write, the descriptions of the penalties so that it's cut and dried and it doesn't leave a lot to interpretation. And maybe that's part of the problem is the way they're written. They're open to interpretation.
Well, that's how Tim Peel got in trouble, right? I mean, he openly said and got caught, right? He said like, "Oh no, I was looking for calls." And I'm just like, you can't do, because that's now you're not doing your job, too, right?
You're not doing your job.
Your job should just be, I'm here to officiate the game, keep it under control, and make sure no one loses their marbles. Like, you know what I mean? I mean, look at game 1. Look at the game of the season against Florida and Boston. Like, it's just a prime example because that's a game. Those games I watch, that the refs let that game get out of control. Like the hit, the behind the hit on Pasternak by AJ Greer. That's on the referees. You got to call that.
Douche.
And too many games these days are getting out of control because of the refs' inconsistency in the calls.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to say like, Boston's innocent or Montreal's innocent.
No team is innocent.
Yeah.
No team is.
Like, you know what I mean? But, everyone tries to cut corners, like, especially Connor Ingram, the diving champion of the year.
There's an old saying, if you're not cheating, you're not trying.
Yep.
That's that. And it's kind of true. Like if you can get away with it, you try. And I get that on the players' part, but I mean that's the job of the refs is to see that and call it for what it is. That's it.
Yeah, like I said, there's 10 skaters on the ice, right? And there's 4 refs. So each ref has to look at a pair of guys, the way I see it, right? And one focused on the play. It's really not, to me, it's not that difficult. I get it. I try to give them a lot of credit in the sense where this is a game where those guys are just getting at 20, 30 miles an hour or something along those lines. You know what I mean? So it's a tough thing. It's a tough judgment call, but decide amongst yourselves as a group before you guys start the game how the game is going to be called, and then call it that way, the same way.
They're going to miss a call here and there. It's human nature.
Fine.
There's nothing you can do about that, right?
Well,
but if they're doing a good job all around all the time, when they miss a call, we wouldn't get so upset, right? Because we know it's going to happen.
Yep.
But when they miss so many or they interpret it in so horribly, it's just.
Or even better yet, if you suspect it's a penalty, put your hands up, communicate at the end of it. If another ref says like, no, I saw it from a better angle, that wasn't a penalty. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, there's like a 5-minute major. You can call that, and there could be no penalty after. There could be more penalty. There could be less penalty.
Yeah, no, that's exactly my point.
Utilize it properly.
And that's exactly my point. It's frustrating when the referee that's behind the play is making the call on a slashing and he's like 80 feet away from it, and he clearly can't see it, but the guy who's staring right at it and he looks at the other ref and he goes, "Oh, really? That's a call." They don't talk about it. That's the problem. I think there needs to be more. There needs to be more communication.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of this? That it was proposed by a lot of people at the end of the last season that or a lot of times people wanted the refs to actually be put in front of the mic at the end of the game to explain certain controversial calls. I think that they should.
Yeah, I wrote this in a poem a couple of years ago. Nobody was talking about this, and I said they should answer.
I agree.
I don't think anyone they should be under fire for it. I think that
explain themselves. That's all.
To help broaden the understanding of why they didn't call that way. Again, it makes the fans a little bit happier, or maybe not happier, but it opens up understanding and how those refs will call it in the future. Because I'd say Kelly Sutherland or some other refs like that, dude. I will say this, they're consistently every game they're calling the ticky-tack stuff, and those are the refs that are going to call it. But the more you put them in front of the mic, the more they have to explain it, the more they'll also have to think about it, and then maybe the better calls that they get.
Also those ones where we're talking about sometimes they can't see it, so they can't overturn. If they would explain those things more often, we'd have a better understanding and wouldn't be as upset.
Right.
Yep.
So it's that lack of communication that makes for a lot of this anger at the refs, I think.
We might have had this conversation a couple weeks ago on hibernation. I am all for that. I'm all for putting refs, umpires, what have you, in front of the mic after the game.
You did mention it a couple weeks ago.
But I don't think that. I mean, I don't think it'll ever happen. I don't think the leagues will let that happen. They won't put their guys in front of the mic. But to your point, again, you have. It's frustrating, but you got to take into consideration these guys are human. There's going to be mistakes.
There are.
And again, especially in playoff games. If one call can decide a game like that, then people deserve an explanation on what they saw and why it was called. But I don't see a world where the leagues do that.
Yeah, I agree. 1,000% agree. But especially like you said, Vogel, in the playoffs, especially because there's games like that could come down to a call and there's never an explanation. So something like that costs a series. I mean, you think you want someone to answer like, hey, what was going on there? We're out of the playoffs now. We want to know. Whatever the case may be.
But again, no matter what league it is, they will. I mean,
they won't
take a lot of flack for that. The refs will, if it was a press conference after, they won't put their guys through that.
Who was it several years ago where it was a team that basically retired 2 or 3 sets of refs? I think it was the San Jose Sharks, right? Like when Pavelski was still on the team, and I think they called a 5-minute major because Pavelski fell on the ice and he hit his head. It was pretty rough, but that wasn't a penalty. That wasn't a 5-minute major. And it ended up, I think Vegas ended up winning that game, or San Jose ended up winning that game because of it. There was something that happened because of that. And I'm just like, you in that respect, you can't just call it because it looked bad. But if he tripped on his own self, and I think that's what it was. And like, it was gruesome, but I don't, again, you just got to get it right.
You see that everywhere, though. At every level, some refs will call the result of a hit instead of the actual hit itself, and you see it all the time.
But how about this for a solution for the refs? Have a spokesperson. NHL hires spokesperson. After the game, they explain what, and then that way the refs aren't in any danger, because that's the worriest, right? If they have to do that, they're going to be in danger.
That's actually
but have a spokesperson talk for them and explain why a ruling might have happened. That would help too.
No, I absolutely agree. See, my thing, I agree with all you guys. They need to invest in anything, and we all know it's never going to happen for the sheer fact that it's going to put a negative limelight publicity for sport. I mean, the action itself already did it, but if a ref were to come out and say, yeah, I blew the call, my bad. Oh, okay, what are you going to do about it? You're going to take some level of accountability? You just screwed us out of a potential playoff game. That's the issue with this, is they're not going to do that because they know if a call is blown in that situation, that it will lead to a ripple effect, not just in the sport itself, but potentially into the national media. And it'll question the integrity of the game. But
that's why a spokesperson can explain the reason why the call would have been made.
Better.
Yeah.
So they, in a way, they already do in some capacity, but only in certain national broadcasting games where they have an NHL rules analyst. But even then, he's not that ref that's making that call. And half the time, you do hear the NHL rules analyst like, "Yeah, I mean, you could, you can't, like, you could, you also could not." I'm just like, no, dude, you need to be definitive. Like, if you're going to be put on, like, national TV to help the referee explain or help explain the call, you need to be definitive in that statement. You can't be ticky-tack with your own explanation, because then now you're just going to make it worse for the people who are watching. Not so much worse for the fans that are in the arena because they can't hear you, but for the fans watching, and there are significantly more fans watching than that are in the arena. So
okay, but in other words, you're saying there's no perfect system and there's not much you can do. I still would rather see somebody come out and kind of explain what might have, why the call was made. Not necessarily explain the call, just like, this is what happened. This is the reason the call was either kept, not, or whatever, I think somebody can explain that.
Sure. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, there already is a protocol that allows for team representatives to go and speak to NHL referees in between periods, so they can explain how the teams are feeling in X, Y, and Z, and so the refs do listen to that. What isn't allowed in the protocol is obviously, like, players, coaches, and like those kind of staff members.
You shouldn't,
for obvious reasons.
Obviously you shouldn't do that. Let them
Unless you're John Tortorella, in which case he'll just walk over to the other team's fucking locker room and threaten to fight the coach. In which case, I'm all for that.
I just saw the video.
Guy's a lunatic.
Yeah, I love it.
Although
he's mellowed
needs
down.
More of him.
I think he's funny, but he's a lunatic. Alex, book him too.
I give
he wishes. He wishes.
I wish, dude. I would. There's nothing that I would love.
I will say, since he's come here, he's mellowed down a bit. He's not quite the raging lunatic he was with, like, the Rangers or Vancouver, or maybe even lesser degree Columbus. He's older, so I don't think he's
so funny. He used to be so funny. He was such a fucking crazy person.
My favorite moment from Torts last year will always be when he compared Morgan Frost to a toilet seat. Said, "Yeah, this guy's so up and down. He's like a toilet seat. You can't keep him still." I'm like, who makes that call? Classic Torts.
There's no shortage of quotes during his press conferences. I'll tell you that.
Oh, geez, Tortorella. We always look forward to his press conferences just to see what he would say.
I'm waiting for him.
It was great, especially if the Flyers get killed. It's like must-watch TV. Everybody's got the press.
There's going to be a point every season where he just becomes unhinged to it. It's going to be so great.
Hey, Torts, we noticed that you haven't been putting Rick Nash on the power play anymore. Do you want to give us a reason as to why that might be? Well, you see, guys, I would put him on the power play, but to be honest with you, he just fucking sucks. Wait, that was one of your best players. And he said it pretty much exactly like that.
Hey, Torts, Ivan Fedotov, is he going to get another start this season? I'd like to, but he just can't stop a beach ball. Like, he sucks. Like, it's like...
It speaks to the truth. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
If we're on the fact, he might. We don't even know who's going to be starting Wednesday yet. He hasn't committed to Fedotov starting the Wednesday game, so that could be something to watch. Fedotov could be in a Philly dump by then, or at the very minimum in Lehigh Valley. We'll see.
It's always an adventure.
The torch show.
Man. All right, I think we beat that dead. Like, you know what I mean? So why don't we move on to our second topic and let's talk about. You're ruining my flow, dude. My thought train is all messed up now.
Sorry, no. Do your flow.
Dude, I'm confused. I can't. We derailed the train. We got to restart. We're stopping the show, guys. We got to stop the show.
Stop and start. We
Stop
actually can do that. I just don't know how to pause it, but we can.
Oh man. No, let's move on to our second stuff. We're going to start talking about the NHL teams as a whole and looking at the season and standings and kind of address standout teams and things like that. And teams that haven't quite lived up to what the expectation has been. So Alex, why don't you take it away?
Nashville.
Well, there's been quite a few teams that have not really lived up, and some teams that have overexceeded expectations. The one that has been the most shocking, and I think all of our opinions, has been the Nashville Predators. It's already started 0-5, yet to get a point, and we're pretty much 2 weeks into the season. Do I think that'll continue? No, I think they'll find their groove. There's too much talent for that team to be this bad for this long.
Last year they were similar, and they went on an 18-game winning streak. So
and then they found their way to the first wild card, I believe, with no issues whatsoever. Of the teams that have struggled, Edmonton 2-4 out of the gate. They didn't stay. I think they only scored 3 goals in their first 3 games. They were really struggling.
Is that all they got?
In their first 3, I mean, now they're a little more.
Stuart Skinner's been really bad too.
Yeah, they beat us
really
bad, and that kind of got them going. They've won 2 out of their last 3. So I mean, I'm not too worried about Edmonton. They'll be in the playoffs. They'll find their way there. They had a much worse start. But those are some of the bad teams. Let's start with that. Anyone else have any bad teams to add to this?
I want to say with Edmonton, I'm kind of surprised. Buffalo, I mean, they definitely haven't started to where they need to be. But I want to just focus on Edmonton real quick before we go into Buffalo. But Edmonton loaded up on the offensive end. And I'm just kind of surprised they only had 3 goals in that time frame. You know what I mean? So I thought that they were going to be a lot better out of the gate than what they were. I mean, the defense hasn't changed, and it's kind of showing a lot of teams got better.
Some teams start slow. Maybe they're just a team that in this formation. Well, they did it last year, right? But yeah. But again, it's again last year with Stuart Skinner, he started abysmally. He had a stretch where he was good, and then he sucked, and then it was kind of back and forth. Probably what'll happen again this year, just by the looks of things. But at what point too do you go? Maybe we should kind of upgrade goalie a little bit, right? Because you don't really want that inconsistency.
Yeah.
Especially as a cup contending team. If he has another season like that, how do you trust him in the playoffs again?
How are they the cup favorites for the betting, and they didn't upgrade their goaltending? I don't get that.
The team is still good. We said it last week too. The team is still good, but they have to figure out the goalie situation. I mean, obviously they think the team's good enough to still win a cup. I think they might. I don't know, but they either gonna have to by the deadline get a goalie or something if they want to make a serious run.
They need a consistent goaltender.
Yeah,
and I think as good as Skinner was in the playoffs last year, because he did have some really, really good games, he's too inconsistent for them to be a team that you can be confident in winning a cup, because he could have a great series, say they get to the cup final again and just completely shit the bed, because that's just how he is.
He's inconsistent. He's inconsistent during the series though. He's inconsistent regular season and playoffs. I don't know how they didn't upgrade at least the backup goaltending there.
Another one this team too. I mean, it's not really a surprise too. Is San Jose? They're 0-4-2. With Celebrini out, and everyone assumed they'd be bottom of the barrel this year anyway. I don't know when they're going to get their next win, maybe the next week or so, but I hope that Nashville doesn't, because the Boston goes there tomorrow, actually.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to you on San Jose, it's kind of not surprised. They're without Macklin Celebrini, I think, right? I don't think he's returned. And I mean, that
I don't think has Askarov played yet either.
I don't think so. I know he was sent down for conditioning.
Oh no, he was hurt, wasn't he?
Yeah,
that's why he got sent down for conditioning.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was dealing with something.
Those are the only 2 winless teams so far, though, right?
I believe so at the moment.
That was my question.
But I mean, their defense is abysmal. They're a young offensive core. I mean, they're gonna figure it out eventually. They're still gonna be a bottom 10 team in the league. I mean, their rebuild is gonna be quick. Like, you know what I mean? Their young offensive talent is gonna be pretty solid. So
I do think God Evan Celebrini's really killing them too, because he's just such a driving force. Like on any team that he'd be on, but especially that team. Like if you don't have your engine, you can't really do anything.
Got a couple teams on the opposite side of the spectrum too. Still haven't taken a loss or a regulation loss. And Winnipeg, who's 5-0, and Calgary, who's sitting at 4-0-1.
I just picked up Dustin Wolf in the fantasy pool. I dropped Gorgiev.
Oh God, he sucks.
I know the goals against per 60 was horrible.
I don't want to necessarily blame Gorgiev because Colorado is missing so many goddamn players. Like if you look at it, they're missing like 5 players right now. Like I said, Gabriel Landeskog, Valeri Nichushkin, Arturi Lehkonen, Devin Tays. I think Devin Tays is coming back, and Jonathan Drouin. I mean, those aren't just 5 nameless people for them. Those are big names.
Nichushkin's gonna be gone for a while. I think he's still in the player assistance program, so he's gonna be a while.
He violated the Players Assistance Program, so
he might be done.
No, he's not done. He needs to reapply.
Doesn't he have a half-season suspension?
Yes, he needs to reapply for reinstatement.
He might not get it.
It depends. It depends. So he's still in it, but if he violates it again, he's pretty much suspended for a whole year, and then he's out.
No, I think he's on his last strike. If he violates it again, I think he's done.
He gets 4. I think he's on his 3rd. Once you get 4, and after that, you're done.
This is supposed to be a down year for Colorado anyway. They had so many cap issues to begin with. I'm not surprised at all. I think they're a wild card team at best this year. They only have one line. Their second line back is just a mess.
Well, it's because all those guys are out. Like, Arturi Lehkonen's out, Drouin's out. I mean, if you put Arturi Lehkonen and Drouin back in on that second line, I mean, the team's that much better. You know what I mean? And then their depth is a little bit. Their lack of depth was showing. You know what I mean with all those guys. But you got to think of it this way too. Like those guys out. Those are significant. So you do that with what you will. I mean, you know what I mean. I think Colorado. 100%. Yeah, I think Colorado will turn it around. I mean, they're not that deep in a hole. They're 2-4-1 or something like that. So they're going to be fine. They're not Nashville. Nashville's 0-5. You know what I mean? They need to turn it around or start turning it around.
They need to start winning. Like I feel like even though it is still early on, they go 2-3 more games without winning. I think they kind of get into that pre-panic-ish mode because at that point you're in a pretty steep hole, especially in a loaded
what I
section.
saw with Edmonton last year, I'm not at that point.
Right, and does that team strike you as a team that's not going to turn around like soon and start winning a little bit?
Sorry, which team is this? Nashville.
Nashville. I can't see that. I mean, they got that. They can't be. They're not a bottom team.
No, but I think their big issue right now, not even just Saros, both their goaltenders are abysmal right now. Like neither of them can stop a beach ball.
Yeah, but it's the whole team.
They regret trading Askarov now.
No, I don't think so. I think it's the whole team. Because Saros is a good goaltender. It's just a rough start. The team has a bunch of new guys. You know, when we interviewed Billy Jaffe, even he said it, right? He said like it's a whole bunch of new guys on a new team.
Yeah.
So, by the way, guys. Go listen to the latest episode of Hibernation, episode 16. We had the astute pleasure of interviewing Mr. Billy Jaffe, who is a NESN commentator for Bruins pre and post game, and he also does work with NHL Network. So go check that out as well. Had to plug that in there, guys. Sorry.
I don't blame you. I do the same.
It was a fun interview. It was a fun interview to take part in.
But yeah, he even said it too, guys. Like, you know what I mean? They're a team that still needs to figure it out. It's pretty obvious, and it's a lot of guys. They went out. Barry Trotz did his job and got that team significantly better. They won free agency. Right now, it doesn't look like it. But do a call back to last year. Edmonton was struggling significantly too, and they went to the Cup final. Albeit, I don't think Edmonton belonged in the Cup final.
And they got veterans there that they brought in. These are guys that they know how to fight through something like this. I don't think it's going to be that long that Nashville is. I think
I'm not saying that it will be, but I'm just saying, right? If they get to a point where they might be like 0-8-0 or something like that,
Okay, but if they do like last year, and they did this last year and go 18-0, that's all in the past after that. So if they have something like that, I don't think this is a problem yet. It's just weird, but it's not a problem. I don't think yet.
It's definitely a weird. And so again, it's been 2 weeks. It's a very small sample size compared to the entire 82 games. But I do to a point agree with Nordy. You get to that 0-7, 0-8. I mean, even if you do pull it together and go on a winning streak there, I mean, it's got to be some part of you that's thinking. I mean, your hand might not be hitting the panic button, but it's hovering over it.
Right, like that's what I mean. Especially, with how loaded that Central is, right? Like they could, the gap could get wider by that time, even within a few games. And at that point, then you're like, well, we got to do something.
Then you need one of those runs.
I will say with Nashville, one thing that stands out, as we just mentioned, is there's so many new bodies there. It's going to take time for this team to gain some chemistry, know each other. You added Marchessault, you added Stamkos, you added Brady Shea. Those are 3 major pieces you added there. I'm giving this team the luxury of time. And I don't think they're in as bad of a shape as people thought. Like I said, we saw what Edmonton did last year. Edmonton and Nashville are, as a whole, I think relatively close talent-wise. I think Edmonton's more talented, but not much, at least in the forward core. But I think Nashville is a much better D core. So when you look at the big picture, I give Nashville the benefit of the doubt there. If they're at 5-13-2 after 20 games or something like that, all right, and we may have some issues here. But right now, I'm not ready to hit the panic button yet. I think they're fine it.
I'm gonna agree with you. I'm gonna agree with you to a degree, right? I don't think they need to slam on the panic button right now. Right now, but let's come to an agreement on this, guys. Like that's not an easy deficit to overcome. And Vogel said, if you start going 0-7, 0-8, even if you're 1-7 and 1-8 or something like that, or 1-6, whatever you want to do the numbers on, but your losses are greatly outweighing your wins. I mean, you got to look at what the amount of teams that are able to overcome that deficit. I mean, it's not many. Like Edmonton did it last year and they went to the Cup final.
Right. And you got to look at the divisions. Like the Central's loaded, right? Like Dallas and Winnipeg right now have a stranglehold at the top, and then it's a gap. How much? Like you lose 2-3 more games in a row, and they keep winning. But that gap just gets incrementally bigger. And how do you overcome that?
But that's my point. That's my point, though. I mean, then look at 2019. The only other team that did something like that was the St. Louis Blues, and they ended up winning the Cup. So it was the opposite for the Edmonton Oilers. But still, it's not exactly a common thing that we see. So if I'm Nashville, I am. If I'm that coach, I'm trying to find and do everything I possibly can to start getting wins under my belt.
I got to think when they get a win, I figure they're going to get a win in the next couple of games. So my prediction is they get their next win.
Hopefully not next game.
And that opens the floodgates, and they're going to win. They're going to win. Just not next game. They're going to win next game
after tomorrow.
I agree with you to an extent, Rick. I do think it could be one of those things. Absolutely, they get one win, and then they fire off, 4 or 5 straight. Well, then all right, now you're cooking. But again, it's how long until that win, right? I can afford them some time, but they go through this week and
not a lot.
Have 1 or 2 wins, then your hand is like a millimeter above the panic button at that point. Again, you got to look at the gap in the standings. How many points you got to overcome at that point now? Is it 10? Is it 12? Is it 8? Like now you're at a point where you're like, we really got to start winning games or we're screwed.
Yeah, and to further add to Matt's point too. Sorry, but I'm just gonna say this real quick, and then you got it. It's not just your record, but the record of the people who are above you that you have to worry about too.
Right. No, exactly right. And that's my point. Like it's because I mean, they could go on a run and catch Dallas and Winnipeg, but Dallas and Winnipeg are friggin' cooking with gas right now. I expect them to keep both those teams to keep winning for the most part. That again, if that happens, Nashville can't get that first win. That gap goes from about here where it is now goes to here, and now you're going, we're in trouble.
Listen, if the Bruins are having a season like the Habs or are like the Habs at all, Nashville is beating them because a team like Nashville comes to play Montreal or we go there, we're losing that game. They always find a way to tomorrow. to end it against us. So the next game when you guys play them.
That's a Flyers thing too. When does Nashville play Philly?
We don't play them until the day after Black Friday. We're good. We don't have to worry about that. I would assume they'll have a win by then. We're the team that everyone breaks streaks against. Buffalo broke their 18-game losing streak against us. San Jose got their first win against us last year after losing, 12 in a row? Arizona broke multiple 10-game losing streaks against us. And they're so bad, they turned into Utah. So, if you have a big losing streak and you play us, you're winning.
Vogel, why don't you say your point? I know you've been waiting.
Well, you might not. I don't want to. I'm not saying anything. I'm just, putting all the cards on the table. I am pretty sure that Cam took the Predators to win the Cup this year.
That he did.
So I'm not. Again, I'm not
He
saying that's what's happening, but Cam might have cursed the Nashville Predators.
Hey.
Well, I'm looking at the standings.
Might be the
right?
curse. Cam Sakarzak on the Nashville Predators. I'm not saying that's what's happening, but we could probably start a dialogue if they win, if they lose the next to the couple.
Vogel, we got to get that trending. Cam curse.
No,
listen, I don't know if it's true. I'm just saying he hadn't won the Cup and they haven't won a game yet.
Listen. When I picked that, I had admittedly said this is just a extremely bold prediction, and it's because I like the underdog and with the acquisitions that they made. So that was because it was a team that I wanted to see win the Cup. It wasn't really a statistical based, opinion.
I'm just saying. The facts are you picked them to win the Cup. They won free agency.
Well, and that's the case, buddy. Then I'm going to pick Montreal.
Hands up, hand up. I mean,
buddy, if this is the case and if that's fucking real, I'm picking Montreal every goddamn year hereafter. I don't want to. Every day I live, I'm picking them. Every year I live,
Pittsburgh every year instead.
Have I said this before? Fuck him.
Yeah, you have.
And can you throw Pittsburgh in there a few years, please?
Sure.
No.
They're so far away from getting another one.
It's got to be a realistic pick.
I made the bold prediction. Pittsburgh is not making the playoffs again until the 2030s. Mark my words. They will not make the playoffs again until the 2030s.
I absolutely hope at the end of this year it comes down to Pittsburgh and Philadelphia between that final wild card spot, and just Pittsburgh in the last game, and it's against Philly. They just beat them in overtime. We
don't play them the last game. We play.
In the last games, I don't care, Alex. I just want to see your tears stream down your face that the Pittsburgh Penguins made the playoffs.
They're too old. I'm not worried about them.
Yeah, right now they're not. Dude, they're not.
I'm worried about my own
so
team
bad, but not so great. Alex, you mentioned Utah. What a team,
that was my
man.
bold prediction to make the wild card, mind you. I feel good about that one.
Dude, they're good.
Cam, I'm glad you brought them up because I'm looking at the Central Division standings, kind of tying all this together. Kind of what I was talking about, a gap kind of between Nashville and those top teams. Right now, it's an 8-point gap to a playoff spot for Nashville, and
is it really?
Winnipeg, Dallas have 10 points. Utah's got 9. And then Minnesota and St. Louis both have 8. So you're looking at that's a 4-game swing right now.
Hey,
like I said, Nashville, they have some time, but
it's not a lot.
That gap could grow
plenty of time.
exponentially within literally the next couple of days. Like that's what I mean when I say if they can't win a game by the end of this week, they might hit the panic button because at that point you're looking at like a 10-point gap for the playoffs at this point.
Alex, you can't tell. They have time, but it's not a lot of time, man. Especially with the way
it's October.
Tons of time.
It's tons of time.
No, but you don't understand. No, but you don't understand what I'm saying. But if that deficit keeps growing, if the teams above them keep playing a lot better, that's the thing, dude. It's not just Nashville. It's not just Nashville that needs to win. The other teams above them need to lose too.
I understand.
But that'll happen. They're not all going to just not lose again.
Oh my God!
I'm going to give you some examples real quick. I've seen some chaos with my team when it comes to nonsense like that. 2014, we started 1-7-1 and 4-10-1, found our way into the playoffs. 2017, the Flyers won 10 straight games, missed the playoffs. 2018, we lost 10 straight games and made the playoffs. Chaos like that happens. There's plenty of season to go. I'm not pre-coming in 2 weeks. If they're like that in 2 months, we can come back to it.
I'd evaluate it around Thanksgiving, but
that's about the time of the season we kind of do. But that's Cam, to your point, if the gap is still 12, 14 points by then,
that's a lot.
And that's where the issue is.
It's too veteran a team to be like that. I just believe they're going to turn it around soon. When are you guys playing them? Boston?
Tomorrow.
Yeah,
Tuesday for those listening.
Yeah, Tuesday. They're turning it around. Mark my words. Next week we'll revisit this. I was right. They beat Boston.
Well, they're being like 0-11, and me and Vogel will be laughing our asses off.
Tomorrow, also too, if you're listening to this the day it comes out on Tuesday the 22nd, this is the first time is the return of the Frozen Frenzy.
Yeah, that's nice.
Every single team playing. Was it the third time? I mean, the first time this year.
It's the third time. First time for the season. They did it, right?
What's that mean? The Frozen Frenzy?
It's like NFL Red Zone, but for hockey.
Playing, and it's pretty much like the red Zone. They're going to bounce around to all the teams, which is honestly when they did it. I think it was last year. The first time they did it was
awesome.
Cool.
I'm so glad that they brought that in.
ESPN ran a whole thing for it for 5 hours, and they kept alternating between games. It was a fantastic concept. It was one of the few things the NHL did right for advertising. Last year, we were the very last game. We played at Vegas at 11 o'clock at night. This year, we're the very first game. We host Washington at 6 p.m. on ESPN. So, a little flip-flop there.
What is that, Saturday? This Saturday?
Tomorrow.
No, tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow.
Every single team plays tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Only time
a lot going on tomorrow, too.
Oh, yeah. We got
Celtics fans listening. Banner 18 gets raised to the rafters tomorrow night as well. It'll be a fun night.
7:30 start time, I think, or something like that tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, so I think we beat Nashville down too. Like, I don't want to keep harping on them. I think, they need to step it up. But I will actually get to Buffalo, but there's two teams that I think people kind of had that were going to significantly regress this year, but they're both 3-1, and that's Tampa and Washington. Now, whether or not that's sustainable is yet to be seen. Right. But I got to tell you, they're playing some good hockey. You know what I mean? So you got to respect that.
Yeah, but it's early, and teams like that, especially Washington, it doesn't surprise me when they start like that. It won't last. It won't last long.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, just two teams too that I want other mention, because I want to save Buffalo for last because they're according to Alex, a terrorist organization.
Terrorism.
And I want to bring up the New York Island. All right, we kill Vogel. We kill Vogel. I was the first one that pointed
it
out.
The New York Jets of the NHL.
Oh my God!
Sorry, I can't continue.
Oh man, I want to bring up the OT merchants and the New York Islanders and the now Minnesota Wild, dude. I just want to say this: they both played 5 freaking games, and they both have 2 OT losses, and I'm just like, oh my God, here we go.
I believe the Islanders, one of them was they went scoreless into the OT.
It doesn't matter. They're gonna somehow find themselves in a playoff spot off their OTLs. They're gonna have probably 30 OTLs, so they're gonna get 30 points just from that. And Minnesota's looking like they're gonna follow that trend, but they're still paying for what Ryan Suter and Zach Parise. I think this is their last year. We're gonna do that. So I don't know. So they have $14 million of dead money. There's really not much to be said about those two teams except for they just. Although we did have a goalie goal, Gustafsson of the Minnesota Wild. That was cool. That was good.
I was watching that game and that happened too. It's pretty dope.
That was awesome. I love a good goalie goal.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. I mean, that's the only shining thing I think coming out of Minnesota right now. But
I know Kaprizov's still a beast.
This is the Islanders asking for overtime losses. Spare some OT losses. It's like friggin' homeless men just asking for friggin' change. That's all their overtime merchants are. It's so bad. I'm going to call this right now. We're going to be at New Year's. Before New Year's, they'll have 10. Before New Year's, they will have 10. Bookmark that.
It's not as bad as Jamey turning the Philadelphia Flyers into the biggest NHL prostitute and send them to Philly. And everything to Philly.
I don't know how serious he was about that.
He's trying to pry Emil Heineman and Oliver Kapanen away from me. I'm like, no.
Buddy, he's trying to call
That is your own fucking problem.
But he's trying to call Gretzky and Bob Orr to get him come out of retirement and play a couple games. He'll take anybody if it means the Flyers getting into the playoff spot.
Someone down the center, though. They need a center, not a
They do.
Yes. But we're going to talk about that.
That's why he's trying to pry Heineman and Kapanen from us, Rick.
No. I know.
Yeah, take the Poirier contract and we'll talk.
Let's talk about everyone's favorite terrorist organization in the form of the Buffalo Sabres, because that's Alex's term. Alex, you're gonna end up getting us canceled, buddy, with that shit. But whatever, dude.
I love making fun of the Sabres.
I'm only bringing them up because I thought this was about, let's look at our predictions that we made and go back and how we like. And I picked Buffalo for 4th, and I don't think so.
They're not. They're 2-4.
I don't know. They're just I don't know.
Yeah, they're not. It's not like they're completely out of it, Rick. Like, but
no,
they're definitely not having a. Yeah, they're 2-4-1.
Just did the Buffalo Sabres. Like, until I see with my eyes on the ice that they have improved, I can't pick them higher than, like I said, like 6. I haven't seen it yet. We're not going to see it until the Pakulas relinquish whatever the fuck oversight they have on that team. Until that happens, they're not doing anything.
Agreed.
Yep, I do agree. It's not great. It's difficult. I mean, it sucks because, like, you have, I would consider a good fan base there, and
it's a passionate fan base for sure. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, it sucks when you just you see something like that. You know what I mean? It's
they're not in last.
No, they're not in last
for them.
Yeah, you're right. But
2 more games played, but they're still ahead of Detroit right now.
Yeah, I mean, Detroit also too was a big wild card for me this year. I mean, I still think that their defense needs work, and I think they have issues in the goaltending. I mean, they signed freaking James Reimer, for Christ's sake. Like, that's not going to do you any good. And I agree with Nordy. Like, the Pagulas need to go. Like, you don't have hockey people that care about it. And a bigger point to all of that, when you get an organization or a management that cares, look at Utah. Utah in their inaugural season went from an Arizona management team, like Arizona, individual that really didn't care for the development of the team. Now look, they're up at top right now.
Again, that could be
sustainable.
Early.
I don't know.
But that could be early.
I don't want to say that the owner of the Coyotes didn't care per se. I just think he was in way over his head and did not have the money at all to it wasn't even just not caring about the team. He hadn't paid his bills for over a decade. I just think he was in too over his head. I think really that was kind of the issue.
Didn't they not pay their hotel bills even too? I heard
for a while. Yeah.
No, they owed back rent on the fucking.
That's why
the arena
because they hadn't agreed. They had an agreement to stay there longer, but they wouldn't pay their rent, so the city canceled their agreement. That's why they got tossed.
Well, that's the problem, though. That's what I mean. But that's just poor management too. Like, if you didn't have the money for it, then it's not just going over your head. I mean, that's just a poor financial decision too. Like, you know what I mean? When you make a decision like that, you need to be able to be prepared to pay for it. You know what I mean? So
yeah, you need to have the deep pockets, right? And why? And to your point, Cam, and then it goes to if he really truly did care about the team, he probably would have sold it.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't it
sold who had the money to do something?
Wasn't it sold a few times, Phoenix, or I'm wrong?
I think it bounced around, but nobody that took over really had the money to do anything, which was the problem.
No, because I think
why?
If they sold the team, they would accrue the team's debt.
No, but I think this is why.
Well, that's. At the end there, that's
people who had money. Right. People who had money that could afford it were too smart to want hockey in Arizona. They knew better.
I don't think it was as much of a problem as hockey being in Arizona. There was a lot of Phoenix faithfuls. You know what I mean? And I feel bad
not
for
enough.
Fans.
Not enough to make money.
Where they moved the team to in the interim when they said we're going to build a new stadium. No, you weren't. This was just an interim thing until you found a buyer. I felt bad for those fans that actually went to the game, albeit there was 6 of them, which is 2 more than what Florida had historically. But whatever. Now they have fans. Quick crack at Florida. Fuck you guys. Yeah, I don't know. But back to Buffalo. Yeah, that's a problem. I don't think it's an issue with their talent. They have talent. They just, they have Lindy Ruff as their head coach. That's a bummer. You could have literally had anybody else, and their ownership sucks.
Hold on. Didn't you like Lindy Ruff?
I thought, no, I don't like him, but I don't hate him.
I think he's an fossil.
It's acknowledged. I can acknowledge a good coach, but he's past his coaching.
That's a more fair assessment. Was he a good coach back in the day? Yes. Is he a good coach now? Fuck no. He's a fossil. That's when the Vogel family just goes in their old ways.
I don't know if it's totally Lindy Ruff's fault. I think it's like in Anaheim, the atmosphere there is not good. So it's not a positive, motivational atmosphere.
I will say about Buffalo, their fan base is losing patience. They have not been selling out their games like they used to. And I don't blame this fan base. When you've gone a decade and a half without a playoff spot, that's crazy. Continue, Dory. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say too, like, and it's not even so much the Pagulas, again, not caring because they still own the Bills. But what they did with the Bills was when the Bills were in that kind of state is they went hands off. They said, we're going to let the football people do this, and we're just going to hang out in the owner's box and chill.
Right. That's what they should do.
They don't do that with they haven't done that with the Sabres yet because it's like Kim Pagula's baby.
Yeah, he loves it.
But again, right, until that happened, like you saw, when it happened with the Bills, all of a sudden, they're a contender. Nothing came of it. It's Buffalo.
It's like Jerry. It's like Jerry Jones with the Dallas Cowboys. Way too involved.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. Kim Pagula is way too involved with the Sabres. Until, again, like they do that same thing they did with the Bills and take a step back and, all right, let the hockey people run the show. We'll just chill in the owner's box. I just can't see Buffalo really doing anything.
I mean, I'd love to bring up the rest of the NHL teams, but for the most part, they're all in the middle of the pack, and they're kind of like doing exactly like what most NHL teams would do, right?
Yeah, I mean, most teams are around 5, 6, 7 points. I mean, it's pretty close, pretty jam-packed.
It's your typical NHL, start to the it's your typical early start to the year. But these teams are teams that have stood out, teams that haven't quite impressed. I mean, we could talk a little bit about Ottawa, but I mean, again, they needed to take that step, right? So, I mean, for the rest of the NHL teams that we didn't mention, I would argue that they're just, staying the course of what an average start to the season would look like. And, they're in it. But the teams that we mentioned are either excelling or have not, played to expectations.
We're the only team in the East with only one win right now. So.
Yeah, but we kind of knew that about the Flyers, Alex. I mean, if you look at it, like last year, oh, come on. You can't tell me that last year was just not maybe a fluke. Like, I don't think you
call that a fluke. If you do it throughout the year, it's not a fluke. They just collapsed at the end because they ran that goalie into the ground.
Yeah, well, it's because
they might have to do it again this year.
Yeah,
they better hope and pray Kolosov can play when they call him up. Otherwise, you are screwed.
Alex, come on. Like, you got to admit, like, that team was not going to go anywhere in the playoffs.
They weren't. No, listen. I'm not going to say that they were as good as their record shows. They overexceeded expectations. But they still have talent on that team. They still have good wingers. They have a respectable decor. The big issue is they didn't.
You have no centers. That's why Jet Lachenko is still on the team.
I absolutely agree with that. The center core is hot trash right now.
Trade Christian Dvorak
is the only reliable guy.
I'll take a hocky puck for Christian Dvorak at this fucking.
Yeah, but Morgan Frost is the only semi-reliable center there right now, and they don't have another goalie to comp at the moment. They have a few in the pool that are going to be friggin' ridiculous. Zabargin especially. This kid's going to be a superstar. But
I think Kakayemi's available.
You said that about Fedotov, too, and Fedotov can't stop a beat.
I didn't say that about Fedotov. He's 27. I said that. I
don't know, man.
Ridiculous. But anyway, not to deviate from the point too much.
No, your goaltending's going to be the death of you guys.
I think it's the centers.
And the
centers and the goaltending.
But the two of those things together, I mean, that's two positions that are important.
I have no issue with Person. The issue with them now.
But the problem is if you don't have a good backup, you're going to run him into the ground, right? And again, that's where Rick's coming from.
I mean, I want to give Fedotov one more start. If he sucks, yank him and go with Kolosov. That's my plan.
Yeah, I mean, you're 9th in goals against.
Yeah.
It's not good. So I mean, if you think about it, so
laying it out here.
Which is weird because he's 6'8". He should take up most, if not all, of the net.
He couldn't. He's letting goals.
But he's also really slow as molasses. Like he can't move. He cannot move. He's so slow to go side to side. It's not even funny.
I wouldn't call being like 9th in like goals against in terms of like having the worst goals against having a respectable defense either. So I mean, I just think that's difficult, but I mean, I think you'll get there eventually, but no, I'm not surprised the Flyers started where they are. They still have some work to do.
About right where I thought.
Oh, they're not. I'm not saying they weren't even close to a cup contender this year, but the West Coast trip sucks, and I hate it, and I'm glad that it's over.
Yeah, but like I said,
I hate West Coast games in general.
But like I said, like, every other team that, aside from the ones that we've mentioned, like, they're doing par for the course for what like any other regular NHL team would kind of be, for the start of the season. Guys, final thoughts.
Yeah, no, I like how you wrapped that, Cam. I do. I agree. I think, for the most part, most teams in the league right now are, like I said, hovering around that 5-6 point mark, which again, right, like that's pretty much league average. Like it's about what you would expect. But yeah, no, we'll see how the season continues, and I know we didn't have time to get to it today, but I think at some point too we'll have to take a look at certain players and whatnot, because there have been some really, really good performances to start the year, and some not so good. But that'll be for a later pod. But yeah, it's been fun start to the year. I'm just really glad hockey's back in general.
I'm going next. So I think it's a small sample size of the season. I think a lot of teams that we're looking at and talking about as bad are going to get their act together, and some of the teams that are surprising are going to fall back. But even that is still early. It's really early.
For sure.
I want to also make two predictions for this week. First one is tomorrow night, Boston's losing to Nashville, and the second one is Sunday night, Montreal's beating Philadelphia.
I think that's the Avengers in next.
Are you guys going live for that?
No, we're going. Me and Gordy are going to the Pats game. So no,
yeah. We're probably going to be sloshed out of our minds.
I mean, I'm going to echo, Rick too. We said it. Vogel and I agreed on Hibernation, yesterday that tomorrow, being Tuesday, is going to be a loss for the Bruins. So that's gonna be it for them. Alex, what do you have for your final thoughts?
Long story short, I'm kind of piggyback with Rick. Don't overreact. It's early. Simple as that. I want to see what things are a month from now, and I think we'll have a better understanding by then. I'll keep it
Sorry,
short.
my alarm was going off.
Vogel, what are your final thoughts, and then take us out of here?
I agree with Nordy. We should revisit this maybe, around Thanksgiving, because it is still early. And as much as I love overreacting to things, to Alex's point, you can't yet. I mean,
right.
Things can turn around so quick, especially with everyone just kind of getting started. I think we are kind of creeping up on the point of the season where, we're still getting started. The season just started. I think that is kind of starting to wear off, and I think that teams are going to start finding more of their identity for who they're going to be this year.
Oh, yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. Sorry about that if it looked like I punched
No, you're good. I think that around Thanksgiving, maybe mid-December, we revisit this. Maybe we take
probably Thanksgiving, maybe a week before. That's typically when when you look at the standings, it's teams. Yeah, obviously teams will move up and down, but typically that'll be a good snapshot of kind of where things will be like for the rest of the year.
Thanksgiving is when teams make their first real evaluations of where they are this season and what they're going to do.
So let's do the same thing here. Let's take a look at our predictions and what we thought, and we'll reevaluate, and who knows, maybe even we get halfway through the year, we can kind of make adjustments to our picks or what have you. But yeah, I mean, like Nordy said, we're back. Hockey's back full swing. It's been great. Tomorrow we get the Frozen Frenzy, which is going to be awesome to watch.
Mm.
Yeah, it's good. That's good. Yeah, a lot of games.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe if nobody has anything else, I think
we're falling asleep or something here.
I think that's gonna wrap for episode 44. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to the Pucking Around podcast. As always, keep an eye out for Flyer Gonna Flyer with Alex and company. Hibernation, me and Cam will be there every week. And Hab Normals over on Talking Habs with Rick and Nordy. Next week it'll be our episode, our Halloween special, our episode before Halloween. So make sure you guys tune into that. And like, subscribe, leave a comment. What do you guys think? What do you guys think about the officiating this year? What do you think about the team so far? What were your biggest surprises, good or bad? And with that, we'll see you guys next week.
We out.
Thanks for watching Pucking Around. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know you're rooting for us. But now it's time to go.